Hello and welcome to today's Decision Fest session. Our topic today is open source and operations research, a Q&A with the Pyomo and HiGHS teams. My name is Haley. I'm part of the Nextmv team here today supporting our event, which features a handful of excellent panelists. Today, our moderator will be Tiff from Nextmv. Our panelists include Ivet and Julian from the HiGHS team and Miranda and John from the Pyomo team. Today's session is meant to incorporate questions and comments, which you can throw into the chat off to the side. Just be mindful of that hosts and panelists versus everyone toggle to make sure that your message or question goes to the right audience. There's also a Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, which you're welcome to use. A few of us from Nextmv will be monitoring the chatter today, and we're happy to help surface your questions either throughout the conversation or during some dedicated Q&A time towards the end. Our timing is somewhat flexible today. We're aiming for about half hour. We've got a little bit of wiggle room on the other side. If you aren't able to stay for the whole session, don't worry. Today's session will be recorded, and we'll make sure to share that with you afterwards. So I'm going to hand it over to this crew here to actually introduce themselves in more detail and get into some good conversations. So I'm looking forward to this one. Tiff, I will hand it over to you to take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Haley. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Really excited to be moderating today's panel. I will do a brief introduction on myself and then hand it over to the panelists to also introduce themselves, and then we will dive in from there. And maybe folks that are listening in, if you want to drop in the chat, if you're a Pyomo, HiGHS user, both, we'd love to hear kind of what you're using, what you're working on, given that's the folks we have today. So briefly, my background is in applied mathematics. I did my PhD in zoology at Cambridge, which is a story for another day. But during my postdoc, I discovered optimization. I was modeling infectious disease dynamics, and dating myself a little bit here, but this was back in the early 2010s when GitHub was just gaining traction. Pyomo was brand new. HiGHS didn't even exist yet. And if you wanted to build something reproducible or shareable, you were largely on your own. So really excited to hear perspectives from folks here that were in that kind of Wild West space back in the day and still today. And I've been at Nextmv as head of product for the past almost 5 years now. I loved getting to see all the different use cases and technology in the space. So let's dive in. And maybe to kick us off, Miranda, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Oh, sure. If it's okay with everybody, though, I always start with jokes because I'm a nervous human. So I'm going to make myself less nervous by giggling. John, you're not allowed to answer because you've already heard this one. Okay. So what do cats and software developers have in common? They both get excited when they find a bug.
That's amazing.
So I'm Miranda. I'm from Sandia National Labs, located in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My background's also in applied mathematics, but as of a week and a half from today, I also am getting my master's in software engineering. I finished my last class last week. So hooray, graduating on the 18th, I believe. So 9 days. Yep. I have been on Pyomo for about 6.5 years at this point, and have been having a really great time with working with it. And John's been on it much longer though, so you should definitely talk to him about that Wild West out there.
Awesome. John, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Sure. John Siirola. I'm also at Sandia National Labs. My background's actually chemical engineering, although in grad school, my department was a bunch of optimization folks. So we've been doing optimization for a long time. What do we do? Well, we'll get into this a little bit later. Pyomo is a side project for almost all of us. We actually are operations research optimizers, modelers, algorithm developers, and then we play with Pyomo on the side. I didn't start Pyomo, but yeah, I've been working. Bill Hart started it, and I've been working with Bill since before Pyomo, so it's been quite a ride.
Awesome. And Julian, you want to kick us off from the high side?
Yeah, well, I've been at Edinburgh for a very, very long time, since 1990, and I've been developing HiGHS with Ivet and other people since about 2018. My background is mathematics, and I'm a maths lecturer, so nothing exotic there.
And Ivet?
Well, my background's mathematics as well and optimization. I joined Edinburgh in 2011. and have been with HiGHS from the start, which happened sort of halfway through my PhD with Julian.
Awesome. Great. Well, great panel ahead. Maybe to kick things off, if you'd like to share just where do your logos come from, and maybe use that as a jumping off point to give a little bit more of an introduction to the origins of Pyomo and HiGHS.
Who wants to go first? Julian?
Yeah, well, the HiGHS logo, it really came from ideas of me and Ivet and a friend of hers. And then it was put together professionally by one of my running buddies who's a graphic designer. And the colours are sampled from the Manchester United website, football team. Otherwise, the name comes from the initials of the original contributors. That's me and Ivet, plus Chi Huang Fu and Lucas Shaw, who wrote LP and simplex solvers as PhD students. And it all started because we had their codes. I could do nothing with them. Ivet could write C++. She'd done LP pre-solve, and she kind of melded everything together. And we started turning Gradware into software so that there were utilities for LP modification. And then she got into build systems, thankfully, and CMake.
John or Miranda, do you want to talk a little bit about the Pyomo logo and
Sure.
origin?
It was completely made up. Back in the day, we did a lot of work with mostly algorithm development, and we had a number of other packages. This is really dating, and then probably no one's ever heard of them, but one of them happened to be a package called Acro. It had a bird as a logo. There was another utility library called Utilib. It had a set of birds as logos. So we had a bird thing going. Bill liked birds, and he had gotten enamored with some other logos that were these origami style. And so we went to Doug Prout, who was one of the graphic designers at Sandia, and said, "Can you do something with this?" And he came back with the logo. So it doesn't symbolize anything. It doesn't mean anything other than we have a thing about birds. And then since then, all of the other parts of Pyomo have been using basically the same set of birds. Doug also did the original PySP logo. So we keep commandeering the birds from the PySP logo and the main Pyomo bird, and they just keep appearing in different forms for all the various, any sub part of Pyomo that feels that they want their own logo, they tend to adapt and modify those.
My
Nice.
personal favorite is the Pyomo Design of Experiments logo because it's the bird with a little jacket on and some lab goggles. It is the cutest version that we have out there for sure.
That's great. I haven't seen that one yet. We also have a bunny in a similar kind of get out. So we have a bunny problem at Nextmv. But, yep. So maybe let's dive into a little bit further on the context. So both projects come from academic context. Maybe speak a little bit about the difference between building research software versus commercial solver and kind of how you've had, or commercial software and how you've had to kind of adapt and grow from that beginning.
I'll happily start on this one because I have many feelings. So one of the other things that I kind of didn't really say in my intro is that I am what's called a research software engineer. And for those here who have heard of that term, yay for you. For those here who haven't, you're not alone. It's a very new term. So when it comes to research software engineering, the idea is that you really have to straddle that line in between something that's more productionized and something that is still exploratory and able to really be played with a little bit more agility. And that's something that we do a lot within Pyomo. John has a particular phrase that he likes to use, which I'm going to let him say now.
Wait, which one is this?
What you like to refer to Pyomo as.
Oh, production research software.
Yes, production research software is generally how we think of Pyomo. So we have this particular area of Pyomo that we call core, which is what we consider to be the more stable, stable APIs. We expect it to have some amount of backwards compatibility. We're in the process of actually formalizing that promise of stability right now and really writing it down so people can understand where we come from with that, because we don't want people to be in the situation like Julian talked about, where you have this code that you're trying to run and it just doesn't work. It's not easy to use, doesn't have documentation. Oh, sure, it might have worked a year ago, but now it doesn't work now. So we have this area that we think of as more productionized and much more stable. And then we have our kind of more Wild West area where people can do whatever.
Mhm.
They can go a little crazy. We have some standards on a certain amount of quality and testing and whatnot, but it's significantly looser. We're also in the process of codifying that as well to make sure that people really know what the commitment is on those areas. But it's all about right sizing, and we have a strong focus on that, making sure that we're doing the right thing for the right different part or the right different intent of that type of code.
And
Well, sorry.
I don't know, I was just going to ask if, yeah, you wanted to jump in, go for it.
No, so I thought you'd finished. HiGHS is really not, although we're based in an academic context, it's not really an academic project, in that for a long time it had no research relevance at all, because it was mainly a case of, apart from the original solvers, which were research projects, it was mainly a case of implementing established techniques. And although some academics will use it, a lot of academics will use the commercial solvers because they get free licenses. So we really have it's more like a small software company, for people who can't afford commercial software. But we've now got PhD students funded to work on HiGHS, and so therefore some novel stuff will come in. And there's a paper on our new interior point solver. So it's probably still more industrial than academic.
And Julian, maybe to build on that, what kind of thinking about project relevance, what applications that you've seen have surprised you? Kind of where are you seeing adoption in HiGHS that maybe you didn't expect?
I mean, the energy modeling, in open source energy modeling ecosystem is one that we just hadn't realized how big it was, and that's been very important for us. Otherwise, well, I've been in this game a long time. I've seen a lot of applications, so I was not surprised by most of the things we've seen.
Yep.
I mean, I've been surprised by the water management and how much logistics is going on there. They're one of my favorite applications.
That's interesting. John and Miranda, have you kind of come across any applications? I know in open source, it's kind of hard to know exactly what people are doing, but yeah, just at conferences or maybe elsewhere, what have you heard about Pyomo use cases?
We're always surprised. And in fact, I mean, quite frankly, the fact that Nextmv was using Pyomo at all was a real surprise to us a number of years ago, right? It's every so often you do a little bit of gratuitous self-Googling to find out who's using Pyomo and are always amazed at what comes up at the top. Some ones that were really kind of interesting. It turns out that a consultant for the California Energy Commission wrote an expansion planning model for them. Turns out that, and it's an open model, and it turns out that model's written in Pyomo. That was a real surprise for us. We have colleagues in the universities who have used Pyomo, and some are still using Pyomo as part of their core curriculum. That was it's always surprising when someone says, "Oh, and we want to use this." I'm like, especially Al Holder at Rose-Hulman gets a particular shout out because he started using it in about 2011. Pyomo was not terribly functional in 2011, but he did. So yeah, we're always surprised at where it pops up and who's using it.
I think the most
Miranda?
interesting one I've seen, because I at least somewhat obnoxiously keep track of what GitHub says our
Mhm.
downstream repositories and packages are, and one of them that constantly surprises me whenever I see it is Facebook has something called Nevergrad, and they list Pyomo as a dependency, and I'm like, oh, Facebook research is
Interesting.
using us. Ooh, how exciting!
And how do you kind of find out where your users are? I know you mentioned GitHub downstream repositories. Are there particular like conferences, events, or journals that people are publishing use cases in? or just
It's
everywhere?
all over the place. I once was at a conference for something entirely unrelated and heard somebody at a table next to me talking about how they were trying to learn how to use Pyomo, and I whipped around and went, wait a minute, let's talk about this.
Awesome. Yvette and Julian, I know you hosted your first HiGHS workshop in 2024, I believe, and you had another one. Would love to hear about kind of what you're learning from those events, kind of who's coming, what are the big topics, and how are people using HiGHS and talking about it there.
Well, airports and flight scheduling is we've had people from there. All sorts of energy thing, people scheduling battery farms and things like that.
Yeah.
The very nice one is that is a company in Denmark that produces software for managing small energy power plants, multi renewable power plants, and they're using HiGHS. And we found out amongst their customers is actually Edinburgh University. So Edinburgh University's estate is managing its power systems, and the problems are being solved with HiGHS, which is kind of cute. But,
that's great.
We find out with people citing a paper that we ask people to cite for academic use, and it's true there's been some slightly bizarre ones there, but otherwise it's just people contacting us saying they've got problems.
Yep.
So there's a whole load of people out there who clearly have been using it for a long time and we just never hear about. But it's interesting to hear about the the GitHub approach to finding out who's using us. We perhaps should look into that. Right?
Yeah, I didn't know how to do that. So
It's particularly effective for Python packages. I don't know how well it works for other things, but for Python, because there's kind of a standard way of declaring dependencies, it seems to be able to scrape that pretty well.
It can
right.
sometimes inflate the numbers a bit though, because if anybody who makes any package or any repo, and pulls in Pyomo, whether or not it's, something formalized or they're just playing around, it's going to show up as this is something that's using you. Okay, great.
Yeah, because we've got what look frankly astonishing download figures for HiGHS of 500,000 downloads a month, and what those are, and how many of them are bots, and how many people doing AI generated optimization, I just don't know.
We touched on Python briefly. Maybe John or Miranda, if you could talk a little bit about kind of technology choices. So I believe Python was chosen in 2008 when Java and C++ dominated. So seems like that may have paid off. And kind of what other technology decisions did you have to make? Kind of what are you grappling with today in that space?
I should really dig up that email. The short version of the long story is several of us on the team, including Bill, myself, John Paul Watson, early on, we learned Python by writing Pyomo. So, by the way, if you ever dig into the code and you go, "Oh my word, why is this done this way? This is insane." They don't know what they're doing. Like, well, we didn't, um, and some of that code's still buried in the core. So we literally, I distinctly remember that email that Bill looked around and said, there's this Python thing, and it looks like it might be useful. I think I want to learn it, and I've got this project that needs an algebraic modeling language that is extendable in a way that the commercial ones aren't. So I'm going to have to write this anyways. Let's use this as an excuse to learn Python. So quite literally, we stumbled into it. It was a little bit of looking around in 2008 and a little bit of curiosity that maybe this is a doable thing.
That's a great story.
I just put this in the chat. We actually just wrote a paper a little bit about the history of Pyomo's development, and kind of doing a really holistic look back on choices that were made, maybe some bad ones, maybe some good ones. I think one of the best things, though, at least for the Pyomo team over the years, is that we haven't been afraid to try something new, to throw away something that is causing us lots of bottlenecks, causing us lots of issues, and to say, well, let's just try, I guess, and see what happens. And it's worked out pretty well for us for the most part.
Awesome. Yeah, I love the title of that paper, Outrunning the Bear. Great and very much captures kind of that journey. Yvette or Julian, I'd be curious if that kind of like making early technology choices, kind of how you navigated that path, even through to today, we're looking at adding GPU acceleration and kind of some newer things in the OR space.
Well, for us,
Con, I was going to say, I was going to lead you in because I was going to say we were tied to C++ as a programming language from the outset, but after that, for the build systems and things, Yvette is the one who can talk on that.
Yeah, so the original simplex solver that she left us was C++, so we had to do C++, which I like, to be honest, so that was nice. And then Python is very popular, so we had to add Python. Julian knew Fortran from before, so we added Fortran. And C#, like the .NET part, came later on, and we're not really .NET experts, so we sort of just support that and count on C# more competent programmers to help us with that. And then since we've had interfaces to many languages, mostly contributed by our users. We have like R and Rust and even JavaScript, and there's a Java. I think there's an Excel plugin somewhere as well. So and of course the C API, which maps to. So yes, we've tried to provide as many interfaces as we can so that people can use HiGHS from their system.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that's a great segue into talking about the communities behind your two technologies. I'd love to hear kind of what does participating in Pyomo or HiGHS look like, and kind of how the community has evolved and how the community can best support an open source project. Maybe Miranda, if you have thoughts, or John, to kick this one off.
Well, John has a very fun start to this one, so I'm going to let him start.
All right.
She always refers to these, and then I have to guess what she's referencing.
Fun game.
At first, we're still surprised we have a community, right? The Computing Research Center at Sandia has a long history of our group is encouraged to release software and get it out there to make it useful to others. So a lot of the software that's developed through the research that's done in the Center for Computing Research is released open source. So there was kind of this natural thing of, oh, we're doing this AML, we'll go ahead and release that. The corollary to that is that we didn't write Pyomo for our the community. We actually wrote it for us and released it on the hope that it might be useful to others. Now we're getting very close to 20 years later. Now there is a very active community, and so if you I should have said this earlier, when you want to find out where your users are, the first thing you should do is break something, and then they come out of the woodwork. So we're actually really lucky. In the last several years, we've had a larger number of developers coming in from kind of outside the original historical core team in Sandia, including some really active developers from academia. But also now we're getting some several developers now from commercial solvers. So they are starting to actually work with us to maintain the interfaces and expand the interfaces between Pyomo and their particular solver, which is really kind of fantastic. So we are always happy to have more folks involved. I don't know. We're an entertaining group. We laugh a lot and we don't take ourselves terribly seriously. But so we also really appreciate folks who want to become involved, either if it's writing code or if it's yelling at us about documentation or coming up with new harebrained ideas. Those are all really good. So it's kind of grown organically, but it's now gotten much bigger than we ever thought it would be.
And what does participation look like, or kind of do people just come to you, or how do you kind of find folks that want to contribute or do contribute?
I think
Um,
we've gotten weirdly lucky with it, honestly.
mhm.
Yeah.
We do have so we have a weekly development call on Tuesdays that we have in our README that says if you want an invite, just let us know, send us an email. We have a distribution list that goes to kind of all of the main core developers. So, if one of us isn't out, somebody else can reply to it. But we've really gotten very, very lucky with some of these, especially these commercial solver folks. I mean, we just got an email
Mhm.
this week that from somebody that said, "Hey, I'm interested in adding this support to Express," and for Express it into Pyomo, and we went, okay, please
Cool.
come to a meeting, come talk to us about it. We tend to have people who join pretty regularly from these communities too now on these Tuesday meetings. It's become part of their Tuesdays.
Mhm.
We're also, more than willing to do things like reply, to long emails with our own long emails or work through, lots of different PRs and whatnot with them. But yeah, it seems like a lot of people mostly have come to us, which has just been very fortunate for us.
Yeah, it's super cool to hear about that collaboration and kind of solver to solver even. Yvette, I'd be curious to hear about kind of the HiGHS community and kind of what you have seen in terms of folks not just using the solver but wanting to contribute to it, and what that has looked like.
Well, it's a bit more tricky, I think, on the solver side. We have had contributions on the interfaces, which we're very happy
Yep.
to accept. But as far as the solver is concerned, we've been more careful about what we
Mhm.
accept, and we have to make sure whatever we accept we can maintain in the future. So maybe
Yep.
it's not as easy as for a modeling
Mm.
framework, but mostly people have got in touch with us, and we have friends in some modeling languages who have helped us a lot with the integration. What would you add, Julian?
I think that one particularly nice contribution is through our relationship with MathWorks, where
Mhm.
MathWorks decided to ditch the MIP and LP solvers they were using internally, which meant that the person who was supporting their MIP solver basically could start working for us.
Cool.
So that's been very handy, and no money changes hands. Obviously, MathWorks wants to show that they're putting something back because they've taken something they can do well with. So that's been a very nice one. So that's helped to develop our MIP team, which previously was a bit thin because we just had somebody who wrote the original solver and then left. Otherwise, yeah, as Yvette said, getting people to contribute the interfaces that in languages that we just can't handle is particularly useful.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, especially on the interface side.
Also,
Miranda,
we
I
would like
wanted,
to
oh,
have
good.
problems. We like the
Yeah,
problems.
nice. Can you talk a little bit more about that a bit?
Well, it's just always good to have more problems to test highs on, and we
Yeah,
do miss edge cases sometimes. And if a user gets in touch and has a funky model that we can look at, then we can catch why it's being funky. And we've made many improvements to highs with models like this.
nice. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's hard to see the edges until people bring them. Yep. Miranda, I was going to ask, I know you mentioned you're a research software engineer. Is that the correct term? RSE. Maybe you could talk a little bit about kind of how software quality practices and that kind of thinking behind that shapes Pyomo's development and maybe the community around it and how they interact with Pyomo.
Oh gosh, that is my favorite
And it's a big
question ever.
topic.
Oh, I love it. Something that I mentioned, we're kind of in the process of codifying this. So something that we try to be really cognizant of within Pyomo is really making sure that we're applying the right amount of quality to the type of work that's being done. So I mentioned we have this kind of core part of Pyomo that we consider to be more stable, and there we have kind of on ourselves a lot more strict
Mm,
guidelines on what quality means, right? We want to have certain level of code coverage to make sure we're actually testing things appropriately. We want to have certain level of documentation. It's not always perfect, don't get me wrong. There's still some
sure.
legacy things out there that we're trying to fix. Um, but we take a very, very careful kind of long-term approach to changes there. For example, in terms of our solver interfaces, we are on, I think, year 2 of probably a 3 to 4 year, we're on year 3 of probably a 3 to 5 year effort to completely reinvent the back ends of our solver interfaces. And this is something we're doing, as you can tell, we're doing it very slowly. We're doing very carefully because we don't want to mess up backwards compatibility for folks who are using our current interfaces. So what we're actually doing for that is we're doing all of our changes in a very controlled location. We call it right now contrib, as in anything that's contributed. That's a little bit of a misnomer. So we're in the process of kind of shaking up what those naming schemes are and what we expect from people. But in that contrib area, right, or in that more Wild West, we tend to be a lot looser with what these requirements look like. We still want some minimal correctness checks because when it comes down to it, when we're looking at the more researchy side of things, the bigger emphasis is, does this work the way that it actually is intended to work? Once upon a time, I wrote this paper talking about a tiered approach to software quality for research projects, for scientific software. And kind of tier one is I'm throwing darts at a dartboard. I have no idea if this experimental thing is even going to work. So it's not like it's really important for me to have solid automated testing set up right now, because I don't know if I'm going to actually get that 2 + 2 = 4. It should, but I don't even know if I'm going to get that. So at that stage, the bigger focus is going to be on, am I saving my data? Am I saving my points in this process, right? I have something that works today. Is it going to work tomorrow? And then you kind of start building from there. And that's kind of the approach we try to take within Pyomo too, of if you're just experimenting, if you're playing, like we want a minimum amount of correctness before we're going to incorporate it in, but we'll work with you on that. We'll go through and look at that from a mathematical perspective, from, a general software quality perspective. We do have certain things that we apply everywhere, like, hey, use PEP8, right? We use the tool black to apply PEP8 everywhere. And I will speak for John Siirola on this one, which is that he hated me when I originally made us do that. Hated me. And then now he tells me he can't read any files that haven't been blackified because it's now just so built into all of us.
And just for my own knowledge and maybe others, PEP8, is this a linter of sorts?
So PEP8 is the Python standard for what they would expect file formatting to look like. So it's how many line breaks, naming schemes, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha. Super useful. Very cool. And Julian or Ivet, I can't remember which one of you said this, but I've heard HiGHS described as from gradware to software as part of your journey. Maybe you could talk a little bit about like how you've managed knowledge transfer and standardization in a project.
Well, in fact, you're the one who keeps us in order with all the unit tests and formatting and everything.
That's quite exciting for me. So I was an intern at Google just before we started putting HiGHS together. So I had the great fortune of observing Google's code from the inside, and I was in awe and really impressed. So from the start, I've insisted on the style guide that Google has, and we've had to adapt and make exceptions. But mostly I learned how to format code, how to test code, how to manage code, how to keep code modular. So these are all very exciting questions and not so straightforward always. And actually the transformation of gradware to software was non-trivial and took a long time and a lot of work and lots of thinking, but we spent a lot of time early on designing the C API, which was going to be used across interfaces, and we wanted to make sure it's consistent and it's got no internal contradictions. And also we're very careful when we add things to HiGHS to make sure they don't contradict things already in HiGHS. And we sort of try to eliminate the problems before they appear, but that is time consuming and it takes effort as well. So I've been really fortunate to be in a position where I have the time to focus on little side things like this, which end up being more important in the long term.
Yeah, that's great.
There's another interesting aspect of this idea of gradware to production. I mean, the software engineering is a huge aspect of this, right? The other one we found, so this makes a little more sense if you realize that Pyomo has actually never been a funded project. Right? It's a side effect of other funded project work that we have here and elsewhere. So one of our other projects we have a lot of graduate students involved. It's a number of universities. And one of the goals of that project is to get that research into the hands of practitioners. And so the vehicle we use is Pyomo and derivative projects.
Mhm.
And one of the things we've actually started there, which has been incredibly effective for helping us to bridge that gap of how do I take gradware and actually make it usable,
Yep.
is we actually have paired with the graduate students somebody from the core package development team. So that's either the Pyomo development team. The project happens to be something called HiGHS, which is a chemical process modeling package. But so someone from either the HiGHS team or the Pyomo team, frequently they're the same people,
Mhm.
start working with the graduate student at the very beginning. So this is long before the code ever sees, a public repository or a pull request or anything. We actually start working with people pretty early on, because as Ivet is hinting, right? If you start with some good practices at the beginning, that goes
Yep.
a long ways, right? But the other one is to let the graduate students do their exploratory research, but every so often check in and go, that's probably not a good design,
Mm.
right? And so
Yep.
coming back and actually teaching the students, because none of them are getting degrees in software engineering, right?
Yep.
They're operations researchers, they're engineers, they're something else. So part of their education turns out to be, how do we think about research software? How do I go through good design, and how can we avoid the case of a graduate student goes off and throws darts at a wall for 5 years. And at the very end, their advisor said, oh, by the way, you have to contribute this and publish it as part of Pyomo or IDEAS or Promise or pick your favorite package.
Yep.
And they go, yeah, but I'm defending in 3 months. And it's, well, okay, fine. I'll bundle this up. I'll put it up as a PR, and we look at it and go, there's no way. Right. And then it
Yep.
dies. So we one of the big ways we've worked on this is actually starting way earlier than you'd think reasonable so some of the new capabilities that you see popping up have been in development for years and have
Mhm.
been kind of lurking in the sides and being refined and being going through some kinds of actual formal design and review long before the public ever sees it.
Yeah, and that experience is incredibly valuable for those students that may end up ultimately working in different industries or commercial spaces and need to make these things actually influence real decisions. So yeah, that's really cool to hear. And maybe I know we've got about 5 to 7 minutes left. Maybe we can shift gears into kind of pontificating about sustainability and the future of open source and OR. I would love to hear kind of thoughts and things that you're excited about in the next, I would say, I don't know, three-ish years in the future of both projects, or things that you're concerned about, just kind of areas of focus and current thinking. Maybe Ivet, if you have thoughts, if you want to kick us off, or feel free to punt it.
Well, not sure how to start. There are a few exciting things happening, mostly in linear optimization. It's the GPU hype at the moment. So HiGHS has started working on a first order solver as well. So I am curious to see how far this will go. I'm not entirely convinced it would be beneficial for all of the problems that we have to solve, but it's certainly something to explore. Maybe I'll hand over to Julian for more forecasting.
Oh, sorry. I think that long term, since Ivet and I have both got open-ended positions just to work largely, well, in my case, largely to work on HiGHS, and hers entirely to work on HiGHS. The key thing is to bring in funding to keep our main developers as well, and to keep the project going. That's the main challenge going forwards. Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of things changing in the
Yeah.
ecosystem around, I guess I don't.
People are using optimization solvers in contexts like ML and AI,
Right.
and in a sense that we don't really see the effect of that, because mathematically they're still solving the same problems. I mean, we are solving a well-defined mathematical problem. So as long as the software can be integrated, and we focus on the interfaces for doing that, underneath mathematically we're still solving the same object. So not an awful lot changes. I mean, linear programming has been around for 80 years, and it's and it's going to be around for another 80 years, I'm sure. Certainly it'll keep me going.
At least.
Yep. John, do you want to chime in on the Pyomo side? Any of your thoughts there?
Oh, I'm going to quote Yogi Berra first. Predictions are hard, especially about the future. The thing I think I'm very excited about, there's lots of little stuff that no one will ever see that we've got in the works that if we ever had time and we joke about the number of features that are quoted in airplane trips, because that's when someone has 4 hours of uninterrupted time to sit and think about code.
Yeah.
But so there's a lot of core infrastructure things that will hopefully make silently everybody's life faster, better, easier. But from user-facing things, the thing I'm most excited about is we're really leaning into this idea of model transformation. So that is modeling in a framework that makes sense to the domain of the problem. And deferring decisions about how we turn it into that standard structure that Julian was just mentioning for the MIP solver or the LP solver or the CP solver or what have you. Deferring those decisions as late as possible. And to the extent we can, relying on automated model transformations to do that. That's something we've been doing for a long time. It's been in Pyomo for more than 10 years. What year is this? Almost 15 years. But we keep finding new applications of that. And so, things that are there now, we do a lot more with disjunctive programming than we ever used to before, because we found that to be a very convenient modeling paradigm. The same with how we handle piecewise linearizations of nonlinear functions. And that kind of idea of how can we express higher level structure in our math programming problems in a way that allows us to explore alternative ways of converting that to the effectively AX less than or equal to B form that the solver wants.
Yep. And Miranda, just in case if you had anything to add that John didn't cover.
I have one thing to add, which is John's going to cringe at me for saying, but it's okay. I'm most excited about something that we as the Pyomo team try really hard to do is, if you don't know, we have a textbook. And our textbook, everything that's written down in it is what we will keep working for the extent of the life of the edition of that textbook. We're in the process of coming up with a new one, which means I get to do lots of backwards compatibility breaks sometime in the next couple of years. And those are my favorite things to do, because that means it's an opportunity for us to really improve the experience for our users. So I'm excited about the fact that we have on our path, and maybe not for a couple of years, but on our path, at least in terms of user experience, we have lots in the works that's going to make Pyomo more performant, that's going to hopefully make it a little bit easier for people to understand, make it more sensical, and getting to add bear references all over the place in the book, because we love our references to outrunning the bear.
That's amazing. Great. No, it's great to hear. We are coming up on time, so I want to bring Haley back just in case we had any questions in the chat to surface briefly.
There's a couple questions that I think we can follow up on the side because we are up against time. I did want to wrap with a couple of items, but I think one thing is not a question for the panel. It's more of a question for everybody tuning in today. I think it sounds like, based off the conversation that has unfolded, it is definitely worthwhile that if you use one of the open source projects that are being discussed today or in other places of your tech stack or practice, sounds like it's worthwhile. Give it a little bit of a shout or a love, like, share, repost, or just a thank you in whatever social channels or otherwise that you have access to. Because it sounds like, again, just hearing the folks today, the more people talk about how they're using open source, experimentally or in full-blown production systems that benefits the project all in all. So I'm going to highlight a couple of things. Hopefully folks can see my screen here for that are coming up and actually taking place right now. So for those that have been following along with the advent of OR from Feasible, that's happening between now through the end of the month. It's something that you can follow on LinkedIn. We'll share the posts that you can participate in, but it's been very interesting and actually been a lot of discussions around some of the software aspects that you were discussing today, Miranda. There's more Decision Fest happening tomorrow and Thursday that folks can tune into. Happening on December 19th, which is a Friday, there's two community events. One that's a bit more oriented towards the European time zones from Optimization for All. The other one is through Informs. It's a little bit more oriented towards North America, South America time zones for those that can join. And then finally, upcoming in April, there's two in-person conferences that folks can keep an eye out for, which would be Informs Analytics and the Euro Practitioners Forum, their annual conference. So with that, I'm going to wrap us up for today. This is a big panel, a lot to cover. I very much appreciate everybody's time today. So thank you, and until next time.